Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Galome Elevation Talks. I know last week we didn't have an episode for you, but don't worry. Hey, man, these things are hectic. Hey, these things are hectic. Sometimes you get overwhelmed and you just need a breather. You know, those times where there's so many things happening that you kind of get overwhelmed because I'm juggling school, I'm juggling GET, I'm juggling post-grad applications and all of that, the whole shebang. So it's been quite hectic, but we're back, we're better, and I will keep producing this amazing content. In this week's episode, it's just as amazing. We will be interviewing Jashan Sippy, who is an architecture and also the founder of Sugar and Space, a combination of architecture and food. Something that I don't think a lot of us think about when we go to places. You know, you go to a place because it has good food or it's cute, but it's never an intentional thing to say, oh, that place has good food and the space around it makes it enjoyable to eat this food. So we will be catching up with him a little later about that, but his talk is actually going to be about being a multipotentialite. He'll define this in his talk, but basically the essence of it is that so many of us have so many talents. We have so many interests, industries that we want to be in, but it's so hard to, focus on just one thing. We want to do it all. And sometimes it's so easy to beat yourself up for wanting to do that. During this interview, I reflect a lot on my experiences, so you guys will get to know that. And please do listen. And as you listen, open up your hearts, open up your ears, open up your minds, and do some self-introspection as you listen to him and take in all this information. And I hope you guys enjoy this, and I hope that you guys are doing great. And enjoy the show. I beg, please don't forget to subscribe. Hit subscribe. You people, you don't subscribe. Hit subscribe, hit the like button, hit it all. And also another thing, production is quite hard. And I'm learning, guys. I didn't go to production school, so I'm learning as I go on the job. I completely forgot to say, we're going on an ad break. And obviously I forgot to say, we're back from the ad break. So if there's a random insert of a video during this whole thing, please do forgive me. But I did want you guys to get a little bit of insight on what Sugar and Space is about and get that little ad break in there, you know.
Hey, I'm Jashan, and I'm so happy to be here today. So, we've all heard this question when we were growing up, and it is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And how many of you actually remember what you used to say? Well, if you were a child growing up in India in the 90s, like me, you would have to either say doctor, lawyer, or engineer for you to get sort of approving or happy looks from people around you. But for me, it was a dilemma between being a chef or an architect. And growing up in India, I sort of went with the more solid career path, which was that of an architect. So here I am. So you must be wondering why I'm going on about this indecisiveness of choosing between being a chef or an architect. But let me introduce you to a concept called multipotentialite. So a multipotentialite is a person who has many different interests or creative pursuits. So they don't necessarily have one true calling, like specialists do. A surprisingly large number of us, though, are multipotentialites. So let me tell you about some multipotentialite superpowers. The first is idea synthesis. So as multipotentialites, we have this ability to pick two different disciplines or fields and merge them together. At this merge or this crossing, you actually hit the breeding ground for innovation. This also means that multipotentialites are rapid learners because we're used to being beginners or non-experts. We're less afraid and we know how to transfer our learned skills between the disciplines. So this makes almost every venture worthwhile. It also makes us agile and adaptable. We have this uncanny ability to morph into whatever we need it to be in a given situation. So all these superpowers allow us to use creative thinking to solve complex problems. Does that sound like you? Don't underestimate yourself. So let's go back to being the architect. I was lucky to have my first internship in San Francisco. I was also having a passionate affair with food at the same time. While I was designing hotels, grocery stores, restaurants, marijuana plantations, and wineries in Northern California, I was also cooking for myself and eating out. Now, for those of you who are in the San Francisco Bay Area, you probably know the world that we live in. You're surrounded by sushi wrapped as burritos, matcha lattes covered in beautiful art, avocado toasts and acai bowls that look too good to eat, and life-size gingerbread houses during the holidays. So every time I was shopping at Trader Joe's, I almost saw myself looking at cross-sections of fruit and vegetable as buildings. So let me introduce you to another concept called cross-disciplinary. The cross-disciplinary approach of thinking relates to or represents more than one branch of knowledge. So you may be wondering, why does this matter? So allow me to explain. There's no denying it. We're spoiled for choice right now. Just think about lunch or dinner yesterday. You had to take many, many decisions in order to get food onto your plate. So think about your takeout. You must have asked yourself, what do I want to eat today? Chinese, Italian, Indian, a good old cheeseburger maybe. And then wondered, which app should I use? Deliveroo, Postmates, or Uber Eats, depending on where you are. Maybe that wasn't so hard, but then you had to pick a restaurant, a few dishes, specify your preferences, whether you wanted it to be oat-free, whether you wanted it to be oat milk, sugar-free, vegan. And it's not just food delivery. Think about your last date. Did you meet the person through Bumble, Tinder, or was it Shadi.com? So we also have shorter attention spans than ever before. So burnouts are quicker, and with more sharing on social media, the fear of missing out is very real. So we also need multiple sources of constant external stimulation to keep us distracted and occupied. These behavior traits, along with overcrowded markets, stiff competition, and globalization, make the need for innovation stronger than ever. So living in the San Francisco Bay Area means you're closest to the global hub of innovation, the Silicon Valley. And while pursuing an MSc in international business at the Hult International Business School a few years ago, I was exposed to these blurring industry boundaries of innovation, the Internet of Things, smart systems, and the use of technology across the board. I remember being fascinated with and almost infatuated by an app which was developing a scent recognition technology for identifying flavors in wine. And after graduating, I landed a managerial role at Candytopia in San Francisco. Now wait for this. If you don't know Candytopia, it's basically Willy Wonka in real life. It was a dream come true for the food architect in me. So Candytopia managed to combine food and architecture and make a solid business out of it. And I was right in the middle of it. So don't get me wrong. There's several challenges when you're working with a cross-disciplinary approach to your work. There's understanding who does what and why. Everyone comes from different backgrounds. There's learning from and learning to respect each other's opinions. There's also the need to prevent the constant struggle for power. And it's also important to cut confusing jargon, which basically means using simpler words so that everyone across the team can understand, and focus really on building a strong community culture by using the right communication tools. So when I moved back to India, I had this overwhelming gut feel that it was time. It was time for me to combine my passion and love for food and for design together, and to leverage the strong international network I'd built, and to transfer and apply the skills I'd learned so far into starting Sugar and Space. So our global multidisciplinary team of 10 work across time zones to curate architectural food tours, build al dente walls made with pasta past their expiration date, and transform food waste into edible inks that we convert into 3D printed food. In a span of 2 years, we've had the pleasure of hosting over 1,500 guests across 6 international cities. We've worked with over 500 students of hospitality, design, innovation, and anthropology. And we constantly strive to upskill ourselves while focusing on harnessing a growth mindset. So in conclusion, I'd like to revisit some key takeaways. Don't take no for an answer. Try and try again to find what works for the multipotentialite in you. If you let go of the fear of failure, take on challenges as they are thrown your way, and allow yourself the freedom to be curious while taking a cross-disciplinary approach to your practice, your tribe can help you be unstoppable. Use your career as a vehicle to your self-expression.
Thank you so much, Jashan. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you on the show. You know, ever since I heard about Sugar and Space from our previous guest, Subi, I thought this guy is amazing. This concept is amazing. And I started following all your social media and just seeing what you're up to. We're going to talk about the topic that you just presented about being a multi-potentialite, because this is such a new term to me. It is absolutely brand new. But before we get to that, I'd like to understand a little bit more about you. And maybe we can dig a little bit and find some insight as to why you're multi-potentialite and why you've grown up to be this person. But give us a little bit about your upbringing. Like, who is Jashan?
So Jashan actually means celebration.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've fully embraced that in the kind of positive work that we try and present and create at any of our events or experiences at Sugar and Space. That being said, I grew up in Mumbai in India, and I grew up very close to my family. So my mom at the time was working in print advertising, and she would do a lot of work with builders and architects in the city. So that meant as a young kid, I would go along with her sometimes to these large boardrooms with massive drawings and these buildings and sort of city plans being drawn up. And I would feel quite accomplished and proud tiny then, sitting at these massive drawings at the table. So I was exposed to that side of construction and architectural design very early. At the same time, back home, I was very close to my nanny, and we would bake a lot together. So whether it was apple pies or cakes, that was something that I loved doing. And I think more than as much as I enjoyed the process of making it, it was the satisfaction of seeing the delight on your loved ones' faces when they sort of consume it. It was a combination of these two that always pulled me between wanting to be a chef or an architect.
Plus, I also know that from a little understanding, in India, food is quite a big thing. Your culture takes food to a whole new level. Like, I've been to some, celebrations like Diwali, and it's just food, and it's all different types of food. So I can see how that comes into play in your life, like how that was such a stronghold in your life. And so why did you not explore the chef side of it? Why did you go to culinary school?
So I've gone on a few certificate programs with food because that's more my passion. But the hotel industry or hospitality in general in India is more disorganized. I would say so.
Mm-hmm.
Construction is disorganized, but so is hospitality. In the sense,
Okay.
they're not necessarily, they're comparatively not as stable career as architecture. So coming again
Mm.
from a background which is, in India, we are conservative still in a certain sense. So
Mm-hmm.
my parents also had a large say in what I would pursue. So the
Mm-hmm.
architectural choice was something that made more sense. But I
Mm,
never
yeah.
let go of my passion for food. So
Yeah. I mean, look at you now. You've figured out a way to combine everything to make it happen. And you speak about how India is conservative. I think Botswana as was very conservative. And growing up, I actually wanted to be a doctor. Um, and now, as we talk about multi-potentialite, I'll say, this is something that I haven't let go. It's not a dream that I've completely let go of because I don't think you ever really do if it's something that was at your core and you really liked it. But I really thought that I had to have one thing. So going into the talk about multi-potentialite, what is a multi-potentialite? Just in case people didn't catch it within your talk. What is that? And what are some of the key factors that can help us identify whether or not we are multi-potentialites?
So definitely, I think we're also trained from a very young age that you need to have the one thing, right? And if you do have, and we're sort of encouraged nowadays, or at least the younger generation is encouraged to sort of explore different interests or different sort of hobbies, which could lead to actual skill sets. But so a multi-potentialite is a person who has more than one different interest or creative pursuit. So that actually means for example, for me, it was the passion between being able to create habitable spaces versus things that could be consumed. And for many other people, it could be as simple as loving to sing and loving to paint. Now, could you combine those two things because you don't want to have to let go of either one of them? Is the sort of toss up.
I completely feel that. And, growing up, I really felt frustrated. I felt very frustrated about having so many interests and feeling like, the world around you wants you to have just that one thing, you know? When did you start embracing that, what, I don't have to force myself into just doing this one thing. I can do it all and I can be happy with doing it all?
So I think it takes me back to the biology lab in high school. So I was very good with and enjoyed studying zoology and botany. But then comes me with a glove on with like a cockroach that we had to dissect. And my hand is trembling like a 7 on the Richter scale. And I knew then for me, like a pure scientific approach or like going with medicine, for example, would not work.
Over a roach?
And the really, really big ones at that. So I was like,
I would have puked.
Sorry, I even forgot what the question was now.
How did you come to realize that, what, I can be a multi-potentialite and do these various things?
It was a long process, to be honest, because there were many times, I mean, for those of you who don't know, the architectural education is a 5-year-long grueling process, almost as intensive as medicine, and has many sleepless nights. And you keep working tirelessly through it. So you have a lot of times where you really want to quit or you find yourself wanting to give up. And that happened to me and almost all my peers, as far as I'm aware. What sort of happened was I kept trying, and what I did was I had my mentor during my final year thesis was the principal of my school, Mr. Rohit Shinkre, and he actually really encouraged me to pursue the research, the 6 months of research that we do in a dissertation project, and combine my love for food and architecture. And I finally came up with my thesis called Gastronomy and Architecture as Multisensory Experiences. After that, though, I still went on to continue working with an architect. I was in San Francisco, pursued a master's in international business. It wasn't until 6 months after starting Sugar and Space where I really just let go of worrying about trying to prove that you can combine the two things and just started creating work that demonstrated that you can connect them. And I think that was the breaking point, which was about mid 2019.
Where you just kind of went at it. Now, with talking about multi-potentialites, we definitely have to talk about the other side of it, which is what's the difference between a multi-potentialite and somebody that is directionless and doesn't have a goal and is just scattered all over the place? Because I think there's a thin line. I would say there's a thin line between those two.
Completely. And I think as multi-potentialites, you sort of struggle with that identity crisis of almost feeling like you are directionless. And a lot of us face it now.
I might just start crying out here. Because these are feelings I've actually had where I'm just like, I don't know what to do. There's just so much I want to do, but I just don't know where to start.
So I think that the fine line is actually being able to identify how serious you are about it and how you can actually, if we're talking from a career perspective, how can you actually build a sustainable business around it? Because otherwise it's nothing but a hobby. So that has also, in our case, taken it's a lot of time, and with the COVID-19 pandemic and having to pivot the kind of work that we do, that also sort of gets tossed up in the air. But like I said, it's something that you don't give up on. At the same time, be very aware and cognizant of the fact that you have to put timelines on these things, where you're pursuing your passion versus it overtaking logic.
Yeah, definitely the timelines on it. Like if you put timelines on things, it makes it a lot more easier. Trust me, starting GET, I worked on it for a long time. I'm sure you know how it feels to start up something. And if you don't have deadlines, then you just kind of sit on it like, yeah, I'll get to it when I can. So now I'd just like to talk about Sugar and Spice. I really want to get to know what is this all about and just share this beautiful idea. What is Sugar and Spice?
So Sugar and Space is a creative food agency.
Space. You know, literally, I've been practicing all day to not say Sugar and Spice.
So we're a creative food agency where we try and connect food and design together, or food and architecture together in creative ways, to basically bring about new perspectives on food, keeping in mind a sort of meaningful connection approach to sustainability for the future of food. So we actually work in 4 different verticals. The first is designing architectural spaces for food. So whether that's grocery stores, cafes, kitchen studios for independent chefs, where we try and take it beyond it being just space planning for a space of food, but we try and bring in our playful, quirky approach to it. So the al dente wall, for example, was a complete wall made out of pasta past its expiration date that we installed in a studio kitchen we designed in Mumbai last year in India. And what that kind of does is it acts as a conversation starter. Not only is it sort of photogenic, but it's also sort of interactive, where people can come in, they're seeing that it's a material they're familiar with. Because traditional material like glass, wood, plaster, doesn't make you want to go and sort of interact with it as much as food does, right?
As
so food
pasta,
sort of,
yeah, like I don't want to interact with a pasta building or
so as much as it didn't encourage people to lick the wall, they sort of would definitely come in and touch it, sniff it, sometimes lick it, and things like that, which really starts a conversation with how we interact with space. So that's part one. At the same time, it was not pasta that was just bought off a shelf and put on a wall. It was sourced from small mom and pop shops for pasta that's past its expiration date. So instead of promoting food waste, we're actually demonstrating how you can upcycle something to start a conversation. So that's one. The second thing is bespoke events and eating experiences. So we really combine all your senses with respect to music, ambience, interaction with people, with the social setting, when we sort of curate our eating experiences and events. We've recently launched Eating Without Eyes, which is a blindfolded eating experience, as experience packages for people to be able to do at home, because we can't really host large public events at the moment. So that's number two.
So people can do that at home. I want to know, how do I get into that? This is a question I was going to save for later, but now that we're here, how do I get into being able to get the tools or, the information or instructions on how to host one of these?
So depending on your location, we can either host them in person. So in Barcelona, San Francisco, or in Mumbai, we can host them in person for small groups. Otherwise, you can head to the website at www.sugarandspace.in/host, and you will be able to book your session online, and most of it is available. We'll work with you virtually wherever you are to make sure you can get the best experience as well.
Okay, so you'll be there virtually instructing, as let's say if I decided to host one, you'd be there instructing me throughout on what to do and how to go about it.
So ideally, I mean, it's a lot of chaos when you're actually hosting it and trying to learn at the same time. So we probably have a setup call before to sort of walk you through the whole thing. And if you had anything, we also offer a virtual co-hosting live at the event if that's sort of required.
Oh, perfect. We'll definitely talk about this post the call. What's the third section of this?
So the third is actually the education side. So raising awareness, because a lot of our projects are about fun when you look at on the face of it, but there's a lot of sort of research and sort of intention with which any project is released. And that's what we bring to the classroom when we work with students globally in hospitality, in design, in innovation, and in anthropology. So we sort of do master classes on 3D printing food and where the market is going with that and how to use it, which is something that not everyone has access to at the moment. Or we do programs about food multisensory experiences where it's sort of engaging workshops or storytelling through shoe pastry, where when you cut open shoe pastry, shoe pastry, right? Eclairs? Or
shoe pastry.
When you cut into it like an eclair or a cream puff, when you cut into the cream puff, it actually has these little spaces inside, which are perfect setting for architecture. So when we work with architecture students, we use shoe pastry for them to start designing spaces and creating products and stuff. And then the fourth leg is the 3D printing of food. So we transform food waste. So let's say you juiced a carrot at home, right? You're left with the pulp, which you would normally either throw away, or if you're a good citizen, you would compost. But what if you could actually eat it? So
which not a lot of us are.
Not a lot of us are. Unfortunately, even if our cities sort of offer the infrastructure to do it, not a lot of us do it. So how could you sort of, again, bring that pulp back to life. So we season it, we sort of process it into an edible ink. We put in our 3D designs into the 3D, and then we're able to create completely edible dishes from food waste. So that's the 3D printing of food.
Okay. So since you're able to do that, is it possible to then take that on a more, global, large scale, like the whole, composting of the whole carrot example that you just gave? Is it possible to get that on a large scale, like where cities could then start doing this, or, towns or whatever?
So I think 3D printing of food at the moment is still far from being widespread. So it's something that's not going to be in everyone's kitchen in the next 5 years. You're not going to have a 3D printer. One is because of the cost of it, right? So once you actually are able to make a 3D printer something that costs as much as a toaster, then maybe people can start using it. But there's a ton of sort of business to business opportunities to actually identify where food is being sort of, I wouldn't say wasted as much as being sort of a byproduct of another process, and then trying to identify if you could create large scale products on it. So there are actually a lot of companies in the Netherlands as well who are working on larger scale processes like this.
3D printing. Okay. So ever since you started Sugar and Space, what has been the highlight of all of this for you?
I think just the possibility of it all. I think that COVID times apart, just the fact that if you actually work on it and sort of set your milestones and goals, there are things that you can sort of somehow or the other, it's not easy to hit them milestones, but you can knock them out of the park. And more than during the process of doing it, I think when you are able to take a weekend off, for example, and look back at how far you've come, that is sort of the most pleasurable, or you even surprise yourself.
It's very rewarding to look back.
And it's not possible without a large team behind it, because there's very, very hard days with any other business that you face. So without the team behind it, you won't be able to do it.
And so to the viewers right now watching, and to everybody at home and anybody that might come across this video, what can they do to become a part of Sugar and Space? Or how can they help you in your process of, I think essentially you're innovating and changing the way that we consume food. How can we aid you in that?
So the first thing is, if there's anyone looking to invest, we would love to have a conversation about it.
Always love investors.
I think fundraising is what we're going to look at in 2021 in order to be able to scale, because we've had a few years to sort of modify, pivot, and work out our structure enough to be able to need to scale it. That's one. For anyone else who wants to engage with us, you can either become a certified Sugar and Space host and host your own eating experiences where you are. And number three, if you don't want to do any of that but still want to be part of the community, we offer a writing series called Food, the Feeling of Home, where you can just share a fond memory of food from your culture, from your home, from your childhood with us, and we publish it as blog posts as well. So we can do.
Oh, that's actually great. That gives it more of a global, international kind of feel where everybody can kind of weigh in and, contribute to this. I love that. I absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Jashan. I think we've come to the end. I really do appreciate you coming onto the show, and I think this is amazing. I learned so much about food today, definitely, and I definitely want to be a part of the hosting. I want to be a certified host. I want to start creating these experiences for my friend, because it seems like so much fun. I watched a video where Subi was hosting one of these things, and people were having fun. People were blindfolded, laughing, and it just seems like it seems like a fun thing to host. It might be chaotic, but it seems very fun.
it's stressful, but then the end of it, I think, is very satisfying and very fun.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you're a super host, you're a super host. So let's
And I will be that. I will be a
Tumelo,
super
thank you.
host.
Have a
Thank you
great
so
day.
much. Any final words that you'd like to leave the people with?
Any questions that you might have, you can always reach out to us either on Instagram or on email at info@sugarandspace.in, or connect with me on LinkedIn and we can have a good conversation there.
Great. Thank you so much, Jashan, and thank you to the viewers for watching. I hope you start to embrace the multi-potentialite within you and really, take charge of your life to say, you know what, I can do it all. I can do whatever the heck I want. You don't just have to have one thing. You can morph and do whatever you want, as many things as you want. Thank you so much. And please do follow Sugar and Spice across all the social media. And if you want to become a super host, a super host like I will be real soon, join the family, and yeah, take care of yourselves and each other. Thank you, Jashan.
Bye.